Welcome to the Paddock Pass podcast and a show with the might of Ducati, the occasional Aprilia floor, the precision of an Austrian bike, the looks of a Yamaha and a hint of Honda dysfunction. I'm Adam Wheeler and for this show, looking ahead to round 5 of 2024 MotoGP and one of the most atmospheric Grand Prix on the calendar, I'm joined by a grid full of characters. First up, David Emmett, still pulsing from the Jerez test, but opting to sit out the gauntlet run through the Le Mans campsite this weekend. How are you, Dave?
I'm very good. As anyone watching this on the old YouTube can see, I'm still at my mum's house. It was her funeral this weekend, so that was a lovely occasion. She went to her rest in a motorbike and sidecar, which was absolutely ace. That was very good. So yes, it's a good job you can't see. You can only see behind me and all around the side where all the packing boxes and other assorted rubbish is.
Good stuff. We saw a post on social media, Dave, so many thoughts with the family again. And it was cool that she got to go off in that sort of style, that mode of transportation.
Yeah, well, you see, they actually started, Mum and Dad got together. They went together on a holiday on the back of a motorbike around France, around Paris. So it seems somehow fitting to bring it up in this podcast.
Then we have Neil Morrison, who will keep us all entertained this weekend with his best efforts at speaking French. Ça va, Neil?
Oui, ça va, merci. Et toi?
Yeah, great, thanks.
Stop giggling.
Next, we have the multi-skilled tradesman of all jacks, Steve English, who will be pounding the streets of Northern Ireland this weekend. You all right, Steve?
It's a strange one, actually, because Neil knows a lot of French, but I've never heard him say "L'addition, s'il vous plaît." I don't know what's up with that, Neil, but just saying. So yeah, and I've got the Northwest 200 this weekend, so looking forward to going up there, and it'll be my first time properly working at the event as well. So I'm excited for this one.
And congratulations to Ipswich as well, Steve.
That was a good one. I had no doubts on Saturday morning when I switched it on, and it was nice to be relaxed all the way through the game, really.
Premier League football. Who would have thunk it? Lastly, but
just one thing, Ad, just one thing. It's worth saying as well to Gavin Emmett that it was always reliable that Leeds were going to just bottle it at the end. So it was all good.
Poor Gavin. Lastly, but no means insignificantly, it's a joy to welcome Tom Morsellino, editor of Sport Bikes magazine, compiler of official stats, and all-round good French egg to the show. Hello, Tom. Ready for the Home GP?
Ready. This is the I would say the most busiest one for us, so for the French guy. So yeah, I'm ready.
Tom, explain a little bit of your history with MotoGP, because we see you so much around the paddock and for a number of years now. What's kind of your connection and how's the current role going with the magazine?
Wow. So if I have to start, my first GP was in 1994 with my father in Le Mans at that time, and then I got the passion for that, and I read a lot of magazine, MotoRevue, MotoJournal at that time as well, and then I always wanted to work in that area. I did my studies in order to become an engineer, but I never find a job in that area. So I did a PhD in computer science. And then by frustration, I created a website called offbikes.com at that time as well, in 10 years ago. And I get my first accreditation, and then I work with Dorna as a French editor for MotoGP.com, then for WorldSBK.com. And, my attraction, I would say in English, but my attraction for numbers, I try to do statistics as well. And Michael Morel, maybe you know him, think that I was a good guy to replace. I would say replace is not the word, but to replace Martin Reins, because I think that he wanted to retire. And then I did the transition with him in 2017. And then since 2018, I'm doing statistics for Dorna as well, full time. And besides, sorry to talk too much, but besides, I'm working as a journalist for MotoRevue with Michel Turcot. Maybe you know him. And I did a lot of articles. But during the winter, last winter, I got the opportunity to replace Maxime Pontreau, who was the chief editor of Sports Bike magazine, and I replaced him, and that's it. Now I'm doing all the job for the Sport Bike magazine as well.
Tom, in the same way that mechanics get a little sweaty when they see David in his hat wandering around pit lane, they could say this. They could say the same thing for you and your camera. I mean, you've sort of developed quite a skill for unearthing the technical side of MotoGP. Is that sort of your big passion inside the sport?
Yeah, exactly. Because as I told you previously, I love mechanics. I love engineering, electronics, and all that stuff. So I try to make a picture of that. So during the years, I try to make some picture, and I never sell it until David Emmett asked me to sell some picture for him on his website, and then that's my passion. So it's not my way of living, you know.
Listen, before, guys, we get on to Le Mans and our preview this weekend, let's talk a little bit about some of the latest news. The fates of Kazakhstan. I mean, the Grand Prix has been effectively postponed till later in the 2024 calendar. But just over to you first, Stevie, for your opinion on this. It's looking tight, isn't it? Because there's not a great deal of room in the second half of the MotoGP schedule.
Yeah, you can't really see where you can fit it in. But it's one of those situations where we go to a new track, and this has happened in the past. I've always thought that you have World Superbikes, and I don't really understand why when you've got new tracks like this, you don't look to host Superbikes there first, because you iron out all the kinks. Buriram's a really good example of it. When we went to Buriram in 2015 for the first time, there was a lot that needed to be sorted, and it took 3 or 4 years to get it sorted. But we had massive crowds, and then when MotoGP came, there wasn't the interest to have the Superbike race. So then you can phase out the Superbike race and then move to the next place where you're going to be able to try and build up whether it's the hotels, the infrastructure, the circuit staff. You know, at the end of the day, a Superbike race has a lot less people at it compared to a MotoGP race, particularly in the media center. So all of these things, that you can iron out a lot of the kinks just by using another asset you have. So I think Kazakhstan, obviously, it's a strange one because there's flooding in the area. So this is a proper force of nature that's caused this, but it's not the first time it's happened either.
Dave, of course there are reasons. I mean, Steve mentioned the poor climate that Kazakhstan people have had, but then also there was some talk about the circuit still not being quite ready in terms of infrastructure, fiber optic installation, and whatever else. I think Dorna have made at least 2 visits to Sokol, certainly 1 at least. But I mean, is there a danger that this Grand Prix could be heading the same way as like the Circuit of Wales or the Grand Prix of Finland?
Well, the difference between this and the Circuit of Wales is that the circuit actually exists. There's actual asphalt. The Circuit of Finland is also a little bit different in the sense that their business plan their business plan failed once geopolitics sort of took over. They were relying on fans coming from St. Petersburg, which is not far away, and then the borders closed. The Russians invaded Ukraine, and that was that. So that finished that. From what I understand from talking to people, Kazakhstan, like the circuit is all there, but there's so much of the infrastructure which is not there. Like you said, the fiber optic cables, race control, all of the stuff that you need to run a race rather than just have a track day is just not there. It hasn't been built. It hasn't been finished. It's just a bit of a mess. Is it going to happen? I don't know. Also, I mean, there has been really quite disastrous flooding in Kazakhstan and Russia, but it's a very long way away, and it hasn't affected the area around Almaty, which is where Sokol is. So that seems to be just a good excuse. The bigger question is, why do we have these? Well, why does Dorna keep putting these races on? I mean, or keep on putting these circuits on the calendar? And the answer to that is really simple. It's money. They get paid anyway. There are insurance policies. There are breakage clauses. There are clauses which allow if there are clauses which allow the circuits to break the to cancel the race or postpone the race or whatever due to circumstances, and the insurance will pay out, or Dorna just make sure they get paid up front. And get to keep the money if it's the circuit's fault for not being ready. So, Dorna are not going to be a great deal out of pocket because of this. They might not get the full sanctioning fee they were hoping for, but they'll certainly get something for their money, and also to cover the cost of their TV contracts. Because this is another thing: when the TV contracts go. When the TV companies sign up, they sign up for 22 races, and they're only getting 20 races. Now there will be sort of clauses in there about force majeure and whether there's anything they can do about it. But there will also be, if you haven't given me enough races, we are taking a cut. We're going to reduce the amount of pay that we're paying for our broadcasting fees. So there's a lot of how can I put it, sort of business juggling in the background to make it all work. But I mean, it's happened before. It's happened many times before. It'll happen many times again in the future. Dorna want to be able to expand. They want to be able to put these things on the calendar, also just as a promotional thing almost. It does make the calendar look much more global. And if it doesn't happen, it's unfortunate, but it's not the complete disaster that you might think.
Neil, in terms of a calendar pivot, what does this mean for the sport? Because we're going to have two sizable breaks, right, in the first kind of half of the schedule. And then it's going to be a bit of a rush towards the end. And in terms of another venue perhaps taking the place and filling the date slot, as Dave was talking about, it's not looking very easy at all once MotoGP starts to fly away.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ed. I think the last couple of years that we've had MotoGP, there's been an element of the series losing its momentum during a kind of a sizable summer break. I mean, people in the paddock obviously love it because there's a 5-week holiday, but I think in terms of trying to maintain a solid narrative of what's been going on, it's sort of deflated a little bit during that 5-week break that we've had the last couple of years in July, and now we're going to have, I think, 3 weeks off in June and another 3-week break in July. So not ideal from that point of view. Personally, not complaining myself, but I think a few fans might be. And in terms of where it can slot in, I mean, we have to kind of bear in mind where Almaty and the Sokol circuit is situated. I mean, it gets pretty cold there. I think even October you would be sort of pushing your luck for being able to go there. I think the average temperature in Almaty in that month is around, well, it has highs of 16 and lows of 4 degrees. Not really that appropriate or suitable for motorbike racing. Would you be able to slot it in September? I mean, it's already extremely tight at that kind of part of the season with India and then a triple header in India, Indonesia, and Japan. Putting it on in front of those would be a big logistical challenge, I feel, and also a sort of emotional challenge for the majority of paddock and riders as well, because you're not just racing 4 weeks consecutively, but 4 weeks in kind of different parts of the world, which is really taxing. So it is quite difficult to see where this slots in at some point later in the year.
Yeah, it's just to say as well, I'm probably one of the few people in the paddock that's actually gone to Kazakhstan, and it's a really cool country. I went to Astana. I was only there for a few days whenever I was working as an engineer, and it was a really nice city. People were really friendly. They put some amount of resources into things. Obviously, they've got a lot of resources there. And when you look at what they've done in tennis over the last few years, with Rabakina winning Wimbledon and all that, they've put a lot of resources into different sports. And if MotoGP goes there, it will be a good event, even though it's one of those events where, like Neil said, it's one of those situations where I think a lot of people in the paddock are probably, you know what, it's not the end of the world to miss out in this race and have the little bit of a longer break.
Tom, what's your opinion? Because I think if Dorna want to go to new territories and new countries and reach new fan bases, then it's always a leap of faith, isn't it? Because, if a promoter or a circuit or a government comes along with a contract and a big check, then you have to take people at face value and believe the promises. But compared to something like Le Mans or Mugello or Assen, the British Grand Prix, some of these really established, history-laden events, going somewhere new is always a risk.
Yeah, exactly. But you You said Le Mans, because Le Mans is quite particular because the promoter is private. I would say I think he is the only one that is private in the calendar yet. So I think that the concern is more, I would say, difficult for Claude Michy, and if we cancel the French GP, for example, like during the pandemic, there was a rumor that the French GP will not happen. So yeah, it's quite difficult, I saw, as David said, I saw the track. It actually exists. I saw Razlan Razali is doing some stuff there. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know if you saw his Instagram. He's doing some travel there. He's doing some track lap in the track. So I don't know. To answer the question, what will be the concerns if we cancel or postpone that kind of new territory in the calendar.
Well, maybe he travelled there on the money he still owes us from the RNF Unlocked show that we did last year. So, I hope he's enjoying his vacation. But listen, guys, let's talk about Le Mans. We're previewing the Grand Prix. It's deservedly one of the most revered Grand Prix on the calendar, seen at the 1000th Grand Prix last year in a record-breaking crowd. It seems like the weather's going to be dry and warm this weekend. Fingers crossed, everything crossed. Let's just talk about some of the memories of the track. Over to you first, Dave. I know you got a let's say a split opinion on Le Mans, but you can't really debate its kind of significance, right?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It's an incredibly important event. I really like the track as well. It is a really good track, and the atmosphere is fantastic as long as you don't mind being bullied by the rough boys, which is very much the case. It's a bit sort of wild and untrammeled. It's either your cup of tea or it's not your cup of tea, and it's definitely not my cup of tea. I was actually planning to go this year, but I literally could not find anywhere for under €1,000, and that's just outrageous. I just couldn't justify spending that sort of money. But yeah, I mean, my main memory of Le Mans is my bike, the Hall effector sensor going on my motorbike and getting stuck there, and doing all sorts of things. And it did actually end up in a very pleasant taxi drive with a lady taxi driver who took me back to my hotel, which was miles away, and she was sort of like telling me like about Le Mans and the 24-hour sort of mania there, that there's a 24-hour everything. There's a 24-hour, obviously there's the 24-hour car race, 24-hour bike race, or I think that's moved now. There's the 24-hour truck race, there's a 24-hour mountain bike race, there's a 24-hour literary festival, and I think she was telling me there's like a 24-hour marble festival as well, so where they play marbles or tiddlywinks or some, I don't know, some kind of game. They seem to have made 24 hours their brand, and they don't do anything which takes less than 24 hours, which would explain why no one sleeps on the campsite, because you've got to be up all night.
Steve, last year they celebrated the centenary for the 24-hour car race. I just wondered how many of those editions you've seen, Steve, in your lifetime. Is it pretty much every one, since you could work out how to talk?
I've always watched it, and I say I've always watched it. The first time I remember watching was once we got Eurosport in the house. You were able to watch it from 98 onwards, and then there was 99 is where you had the Mercs flipping, and that was obviously a big moment everyone's probably seen on social media. Dave, it's also worth noting the 24-hour rollerblade race. That's the one I want to see you in. And Le Mans great. I love it. Like, I went for the first time for the MotoGP race in 2007, the Christopher Mullen year, and I think Bradley Smith had his first career podium as well that day in the 125 class. And it was great. I went as a fan. It was me and my dad, and it was just great. We went to the 24-hour car race then later that year as well, and I think I've been to four of the 24-hour races, and they're great. I've worked the Le Mans 24-hour bike race. Didn't get to work it this year because it was clashing with the Assen round the World SBK, but I really like Le Mans, and I don't know why, but I even like it for MotoGP on the little tiddly track. So yeah, I love Le Mans. It's my cup of tea, Dave. And when you go and you get to the museum and everything like that, it's really good. If you're a fan at the event, there's obviously everything that goes on at the race, but everywhere you go, you're able to stand pretty close to the action. So for me, Le Mans is a really good place for any fan to go as well.
Steve obviously means the Bugatti circuit when he's talking about the tiddly layout. But, you know, Steve, just quickly, what was the vibe like between the cars and the bikes? Was it a similar kind of riotous, boisterous affair?
No, it was totally different. The bike race is the first year we went for the bike race. So it was 2007, the only year I went to Safan for the bike race. Me and Dad got our tent and we were setting up to camp at the racetrack. And that's a mistake you only make for us for one night. And we got the hell out of Dodge and we went to a farmer down the road and we said, "Can we just pitch up in your field?" And the farmer was there. "If you bring a few bottles of wine, you can do anything you want, lads." So gave him a few bottles of wine. We were able to get a good night's sleep. But you go for the 24-hour car race and there's the carnival on all the way through the night, which is pretty cool. If you go up on the big wheel at night, you get to see the headlights through the forest and everything like that. That's really good. But the atmosphere is totally different. It's a huge crowd. It's everyone that's gone there once seems to go about 50 times. And the atmosphere is much more relaxed because it's a spread out event. It's a week. You're in town, you're at the track, there's choirs and everything in the middle of the paddock. You know, it's a very different event. It's an event that, even though it's four wheels, I'm pretty sure Dave would actually love to go to because now with all the hypercar technology as well, it's actually a really interesting event. And I like France. France is always a pretty cool place to go. I'd prefer if for World Superbikes we went to, whether it was Le Mans, whether it was Paul Ricard, just because it'd be a little bit easier to get to than Magny Cours, even though we always end up with good races in Magny. But I think that Le Mans is something a little bit special.
Neil, aside from the crazy reverberation and echo around the back of the grandstand when you're trying to do any kind of activity from a media point of view, I think it's mainly just due to the architecture of the place. Is there anything that kind of stands out for, of Le Mans for you?
The atmosphere, I think. I mean, it's a pretty obvious thing to say, but you always, I think, in this job, like to go somewhere on a Sunday morning and feel that you're part of something spectacular, something that has the kind of national eye trained on it. And you certainly have that at Le Mans. The last couple of years have been sensational. Last year in particular was just a festival right the way through from Thursday evening. And yeah, it's just that sort of roar that you hear when the Marseillaise is played just before the MotoGP race. Everyone in the grandstand is singing. It's genuinely a moment that gives you some tingles. So it's quite remarkable, and God knows what the reaction would be if a French rider actually did really well at the track, because it's been something of a bogey circuit. In terms of results for both the French lads in MotoGP, at the moment they've had the occasional good result, but they've never quite managed to win there. I mean, I think it's a bit of a far cry for that to happen this year. But yeah, the atmosphere is definitely the thing that sticks out. The circuit is cool, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's one of the best. It's certainly not one of the best that we visit. But in terms of atmosphere, it's unique.
Yeah, about the sound. When I was doing pit lane, it was absolutely the loudest place on earth. I mean, you would start to do an interview with someone, and then the bikes would come by, and nobody could hear anything. I don't think the listeners heard anything. I wouldn't hear anything. They wouldn't hear anything. It's absolutely deafening. It's an amazing sort of piece of architecture. There's a few places like that which are really, really loud, but the grandstand at Le Mans is just it just seems to trap and echo and amplify the noise, and it's deafening.
Tom, you said you went for the first time in '94 with your dad. Did Le Mans make an impression on you, or have you been like a fan of, say, other circuits like Paul Ricard or Magny Cours or Nogaro? These other circuits that also have Grand Prix history for France.
This is a special memory for me because I went there. That was my first Grand Prix, so this is particular in that sense. But then also because I stopped before the Dunlop chicane, I would say, and at that time riders in 1 to 5, I would say in English, they did arrêt carbu. they go straight on the straight and they stop the bike when they are on full gas, and they stop the bike and stop at the end at the uphill of the chicane up, and then they go back to the pit lane just with how to say in English, sorry, but with the clutch on and with the engine off, and this is called arrêt carbu in French, and all the bikes stop just straight in front of me, and that guy with the yellow bike called Dick Raudis was the current world champion, and it was the yellow bike, and this is the particular memory for me. And but Le Mans is quite particular because this is a party during all the weekend, and the organizer, promoter Claude Michy and his team is doing a lot of work to keep the people inside the track all the weekend, because there were in maybe 30 years ago there was a lot of accidents during 24-hour Le Mans outside the track, riders that were killed, not rider but motorcycle that were killed, and to prevent that kind of situation they did everything to keep the people in the track. So they did a lot of stuff like concerts, like mechanical show, in the straight on the Saturday night, and there is a meet and greet with the rider during all the weekend, and there is a lot of stuff for the people there. So this is a great party, and that's make it really, really interesting, and the atmosphere is quite particular. So this is, how to say, a good one in the calendar, but as a French, I did a lot of French GP, so I like go somewhere else,
Well, that's just it. I mean, Le Mans is a success because of the mechanics of the Grand Prix. And by that, I mean sort of the system behind it. The ticket prices are not crazy. I think it's 106 euros for 3 days. It's 85 euros just for Sunday admission. So that shows you the extra bang you get for your buck, particularly if you're turning up on Saturday and you get the sprint for the second year in a row. Under 16s are free, which is pretty impressive. Yep. And, if you're accompanied by an adult. And then, of course, you have particular grandstands, which is something we see more and more at now at circuits for Fabio Quartararo, Johann Zarco, Ducati, Pecco Bagnaia has one, the Marquez brothers and Honda. And then, as you said, Tom, you have all the fans contained on site. So entertainment is there. You don't really need to move. And then, of course, you have all that sort of history and sense of occasion as well. So, I don't think it's a recipe that a lot of other tracks can follow, right, guys? I don't know if anyone's got a strong opinion on this, but it just seems to be the right sort of elixir that works for this particular territory.
I know that the guys from Assen go to Le Mans every year precisely to learn from the atmosphere, to try to recreate that same event, and they've done a lot of work at Assen to try to turn the race into a much bigger event, an event across sort of several days, to keep people in the area and to keep them entertained, sort of thing. So just the way that it's been organized is a massive and props to Claude Michy. He's done just an amazing job, genuinely a fantastic job, and he's an inspiration for a lot of races because he really has created an event. And like I say, Assen do their best to they try to learn from it and try to replicate it, not in the same way, because you shouldn't just sort of try to copy. What you should do is look at the ideas and see how you can fit them into their context, and they do that really well as well.
What about the track itself, guys? The Bugatti circuit. MotoGP's been there since 2000, so we're coming up sort of like to 25 years almost. I know we missed the pandemic season, but Neil, what's your opinion? Because you're watching so many corners on repeat, doing the commentary sessions for Moto2 and Moto3. I just wondered what you sort of thought of this particular venue. Is it a good track for racing?
It's maybe not one that will stand out as a classic track for brilliant racing. It's certainly no Mugello or Silverstone or Phillip Island, but I think it's a pretty interesting track. It's quite varied. I think since they changed the area after the Dunlop chicane and made it into a sort of more flowing, sweeping downhill section, that was really quite interesting. It has some fantastic parts. The first and I think second corners they're classified as at the end of the front straight. That fast right is really spectacular. And then they have some great bits up around the Dunlop chicane just after that, down into La Chapelle. I guess it gets a little bit stop-start after that, but yeah, it's kind of has its own unique character, and the fact that it has several of those really heavy braking zones, right, 90-degree like right or left-hand turns. Yeah, and it generally throws up decent racing. We haven't always had brilliant MotoGP racing, but I think, thinking back to a couple of great moments at the track in the years gone by, and I can think of several.
Steve, is this the one for the hard breakers? I mean, do we need to be looking at the likes of, say, Bagnaia, the way that the KTMs have been able to stop as well this season? Somebody like Pedro Acosta, who's adapted to that phase of MotoGP riding so well.
I think it's one of those tracks that you need to be the all-round package, because the first half, like Neil said, is very different to the second half. And when you've got the Dunlop chicane at the start of the lap, you obviously need a bike that's going to be very good braking on the angle. But somewhere like La Chapelle, you need a bike that's going to be good and stable, because if you're a couple of meters offline at the start of that corner, you're on the angle for so long all the way through there that you'll just lose tons of time. So you need a bike that's really able to do everything, which brings us to, this is another track where you'd expect Ducati to be very good. I think that the Aprilia could spring themselves back up to the front again in this one. And then Pedro Acosta's just Pedro Acosta now. And the interesting thing for me about Acosta, obviously I haven't been on the podcast too often since we've started the MotoGP season, but from whenever I saw him in the junior GP paddock and then obviously Moto3, Moto2, he's always done what he's done now. And he's right there straight away every weekend. So this is another place where he'll certainly expect to be able to fight at the front. And I think that when you look at Acosta in the second half of the lap, from the S's through to the end of the lap, he's going to make overtaking moves in there. He's just going to put his bike down the inside. Obviously, for me now, I have to watch a lot of superbike racing, whether it's national championships or the world championship. And Acosta has the exact same attitude as someone like Toprak, where he'll leave it up to you to avoid the incident, which is what we always saw the likes of Mark do whenever he came on the scene. Rossi did the same. And that's one of those tactics that riders want to use. And he's using it really well now, and he'll do it this weekend as well in the second half of the lap.
Dave, the Yamahas are struggling to turn. Honda are in a world of trouble, as we know. It doesn't bode too well for the French riders on the MotoGP grid. Is Le Mans going to offer any kind of reprieve in any way?
No, is the short answer. Sadly, it's too early, really. We saw Honda and Yamaha testing a lot, really a lot of things. But I don't think the things at the Jerez test, but I don't think the things they were testing there will make a lot of difference. Especially Yamaha, I think it's going to be really difficult for Fabio Quartararo, because this is a track where you are turning a lot. And turning is what the bike really doesn't do. At least there's a few sort of like stop and start bits, which may help a little bit. But yeah, I think they're going to be. they're going to be in real trouble. I'm going to be interested to see what KTM can do and what Aprilia can do as well, because I think the Aprilias could do well. And I mean, Maverick has had a reasonable run at there, and obviously he had a bit of a difficult time in Jerez. So let's see which Maverick turns up.
Tom, we spoke about the virtues of the Grand Prix itself, but what do you think about the actual circuit? I mean, are there many places also on the calendar that are kind of similar? I mean, we're coming from Jerez, which is pretty compact, has some hard braking corners and very closed corners as well. Just wonder what your thoughts were on the Bugatti layout.
Yeah, again, it's particular because when you know the story of the Bugatti, there were some places that were changed through the years. The chicane Dunlop at the beginning was not there. There is only a corner there going through the Chapelle the corner. So this is the layout is quite interesting. As Neil said, it's stop and go track. So you need some acceleration and braking capabilities, and then compared to Jerez, it's interesting because there is a lot of space to make overtakes. So this is an interesting track for battles, but sometimes in the recent years there is no battle because a rider can make the gap and win the race, like Lorenzo. Lorenzo was the king of Le Mans. So yeah. It is on the paper. The layout is interesting, but for the races, it's quite different. It's it's not the best one for battles, I would say.
Speaking of making a gap, we've made the request to KTM to get hold of a new KTM 990 Duke, which we hope will help be one of our first bike reviews on the podcast and a chance to get the hang of some GoPro editing. There are 7 options in the 2024 Duke Naked Bike collection: the KTM 1390 Super Duke R and the Evo versions, the 990, 790, 390, 250, and the 125, so the full scale for commuting or any other tyre shredding means. Lots of torque, great performance, the latest electronics, and other unmissable style. There is also a KTM Duke for everyone in that collection. No bullshit. We'll keep you posted when we get our hands on the 990, and hopefully we'll also have Dave kitted out with a KTM 1290 Super Adventure or an 890 Adventure to get to the Red Bull Ring this summer. Anyway, continuing on with the podcast, and Tom, speak again, because the French effect really has a lot to do with some of the massive crowds we've seen at Le Mans in recent years. We kind of tend to forget that Johann Zarco, I think he still is the most decorated rider in French rider in Grand Prix history in terms of championships and wins. Of course, I mean, the first time I really noticed Le Mans buzzing to the tune of a new superstar was maybe 2015, I think, when he made his debut in the MotoGP class and had such a positive effect right away on the Tech3 Yamaha. And, it seems thanks to Zarco and Quartararo, that's also helped, burgeon the whole crowd effect at Le Mans.
Yeah, concerning the French rider, we have 2 riders that touch all the kind of generations. There is a young guy called Fabio Quartararo that is quite active on the social networks and can and young people can identify to himself, copy and to and Johann Zarco is quite more old, I would say, and corresponding to most people like me and old people, I would say, the passionate people, not young people. That this is interesting because there is only 2 French riders can touch everyone in the French community, and this is what Claude Michy thought about that. He said that we have the chance to have 2 great French riders and that touch everyone, and then hopefully we will have another one in a few years, because Zarco will probably leave in 2 years, now 1 year and a half, and Fabio is not, he has more years, but there is no French rider after that. There is no one coming from Junior GP or CAV or Red Bull Rookies Cup. So yeah, that's buzz around French rider. Maybe will stop in a few years. So if we need more French riders in a few years, because maybe the attendance of the French VP will not be the same in a few years because of that.
What can the French Federation do about that? And also, what's the state of the French National Championship? Because it seems, I mean, it only sort of passes me by in the periphery of my consciousness, if you know what I mean. I can't say I spend a lot of time thinking about the FFM Superbike Championship or any of the rest of it. But is there a route for French riders other than the Red Bull Rookies, and obviously, for example, the Northern Talent Cup, some of the Talent Cups are put there, but is there really a junior series for them to come through?
There is a junior series in the French Superbike Championship for the young riders, but there is also something called Elite, Group Elite, for the French rider that are helped by the French Federation to go to the ETC, to go to the CEV. So there is some French riders that are backed. Sorry for my accent. That are backed by the French Federation to go to the European, you say, how to say, in championships, to help them to go there. So this is the main thing I would say, to help French people to go to the World Championship in a few years. So
yeah, I think it's really important for national, and it's something you don't always see. I think that national federations underestimate the role they can play in promoting, like kids and getting them into it. If you even think about Italy, the fact that Italy was struggling for a little while, and then Valentino Rossi set up the VR46 Academy and produced a whole generation of new riders. And those are the sort of facilities. That's the sort of thing that you need to do. So
there is a lot of French riders doing stuff for the young riders. Zohan Zarco, a few years ago, made something called ZDF Grand Prix with Laurent Felon, and they did a school for young riders to help them to go to the French Championship and to go to the Italian or Spanish Championship. And then there is a lot of other riders, old riders, former riders like Sébastien Gimbert, like I forgot the name, but there is a lot of French riders that are making schools for young riders, but maybe there is too much school for for riders. So so it's quite difficult for young people to choose and to know the real path to go to the World Championship.
Okay, I have one more question for you, and it's a very important one, Tom. So listen carefully. Is Sylvain Gantoli a French rider or a British rider?
I did an interview with him 2 days ago. Yeah, he is French, so at least he is a French. He was French when he was world champion in World SBK. So
and he stopped being French when he stopped winning.
Maybe.
Tom, we've talked about Fabio Quartararo's decision to stay with Yamaha on this podcast. What's your view on the contract decision?
I think that is maybe it's a mistake. I would say that he will stay with the bike that we know that won't maybe evolve in a few years because the new regulation that's just come out, if you saw that, and maybe the bike will not evolve until 2007. So maybe you will have to deal with this kind of bikes and to battle with Ducatis and KTM. And so I was personally convinced that he signed with Aprilia, but no. And I think that it's maybe a mistake. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that he should have signed with Aprilia just for the challenge, just to see that he can win with a different bike, and yeah, that's it.
I did an interview with Tom Morban, like his friend and his sort of confidant in Jerez, and he was just pointing out how popular Fabio actually is in France. I mean, he can hang out with Kylian Mbappé and just these other leading sportsmen quite easily. I hope just like 2 years, well, maybe it's doing a bit of a disservice to Yamaha, but 2 years of sort of stagnant performances, I hope that's not going to affect his profile too much when people start to write him off. I mean, you'd have to think that Yamaha would turn things around before, MotoGP pivots. And we'll come on to that in a moment because 2024 is the 20th anniversary of Fly Racing. There's a wealth of road bike apparel and protective options on flyracing.com. And if you're a dirt bike rider and looking for a new entry-level helmet, then the 2024 Kinetic Lid is all you need for a great price. Alternatively, we think that you cannot put a number on your head, so max out the budget and opt for the full performance of the Fly Formula S helmet instead. Unbeatable tech and engineering, as well as a comfortable fit, good ventilation, and decent looks. Yes, on the subject of 2027, we're recording the podcast right now, and the press release has just dropped from the FIM and also Dorna. Dave, can you just sort of sum up what has been published?
Yes, right. Well, I mean, a lot of it we already knew. The fact that it's going to be 850cc maximum capacity, a 75 millimeter maximum bore, which basically means they can take their engines and downbore them. It should cap the revs a little bit. It'll stop the revs from increasing. The thing that people will like most of all is the fact that they're going to get rid of whole shot devices, or ride height devices and whole shot devices. So they won't be there at the start either. I had sort of heard a little bit the things that they wanted to keep the whole shot devices, but take the ride height devices on. So that's going to be good. I think that's going to put the riding back into the rider's hands. Aero is going to be limited. It's sort of a bit technical. Basically, they're going to reduce the width, the maximum width. They're also going to start making manufacturers homologate the rear ride height, the rear aero as well. So what you're seeing now is, because the rear is unregulated, they are just developing more and more and more. They're also limiting the maximum height of the tail, which basically, in effect, also reduces the maximum amount of aero. Basically the maximum amount of room for putting aero on the back of the bike. They are reducing the number of permissible gear ratios throughout the year. At the start of the year, you have to sort of homologate a set number of gear ratios that they can use throughout. Basically, they'll still have 6 gears, but the ratios they can choose from will be less, and that will also mean that they'll have to go to very slightly more torquier motors, because they can't get the precise gearing that they want at every single track. Apart from that, so 20 litres of fuel and 11 litres for the sprint. Minimum weight is also to be reduced from, I think, 157 to 153. And an interesting one for me, which I don't really sort of understand, but I'm sure I shall have to go and ask some people. GPS data from all riders will be made available to all teams at the end of each session, which I think could also be a way of leveling out the performance. By forcing the teams to data share, it means that they get a little bit more of an insight into where the various, what everyone is doing. But that's one of those things which definitely has a reason. I don't know what the reason is, so we'll have to go and find out.
Tom, is there much of a surprise? I mean, David said we knew a lot of these regulations were coming. I assume the MSMA all have to vote on this, or people can be outvoted. I'm not too sure how the kind of
the way it works is basically Dorna and negotiate with the MSMA. The MSMA have to agree amongst themselves. They have to be unanimous in the end. And it's just it's a lot of there's a lot of sort of horse trading about who gets what and all the rest of it. Because I know, for example, that I think Aprilia wanted to keep 1000cc and then just downbought a 75 millimeter, which I think would have been much more interesting. You'd have got a sort of longer stroke engine. It would also have been more interesting to reduce the number of the number of gears, to go from 6 gears to 5 gears or even 4 gears. That would be very interesting. But yeah, basically it's a process of horse trading, and all of the MSMA have to sign off on this. They all know they're going to lose, so it's about what they lose.
Tom, is this going to be, I know it's a hard question to answer at the moment, but will it have the effect of reducing speed? Is that sort of the main motivation behind this?
Yeah, this is the safety. I have the chance to talk with Romano Albesiano and Gigi Dall'Igna in the last GPs, and they told me that the main concern is the safety, because the track are becoming narrow and narrow. We are going faster, quicker. So so that's why they are trying to reduce the speed, and it will be different than when we switch to 800cc. There is more, I would say, the regulation will be I would say written just to avoid that kind of mistake they did in when they switched to 800cc, because the bike were faster than the 900cc. So yeah, and the only thing that is not on the press release is that I think that Romano Albesiano or maybe Gigi Dall'Igna, I don't remember the guy, but they try to freeze the engine development in 2026 just to avoid financial cost. To develop two bikes in parallel. The 100cc bikes and the 850cc bike. So I think that they try to do that just to avoid financial cost, especially for Aprilia, I would say, because they have to develop brand new bikes, and with maybe less budget than maybe Yamaha or Honda. So
yeah, for me, the GPS is actually the first thing that I saw that really got me quite interested whenever I looked at it. And you'll understand this from your time in MXGP. If you look at the data that you get from the Lit Pro, any readouts that you get from that about how riders are able to, maybe some guys are doing a single double and some guys are doing a triple, and you're able to see which is faster. You're able to understand the strengths of different lines around a motocross track. The GPS could be something similar actually for the teams as well, because they'll be able to see where their bike is really struggling, and they'll be able to look at it and say, okay, well, consistently out of first gear corners we're having this problem, or consistently we're losing a little bit compared to XYZ in different sections of the track. And that's where the gear ratios comes into it as well then, Dave, because that's where you'll then really be able to make your assessment about what gear ratios you want to use, because you can see a much broader perspective of all that data. Obviously, Ducati have all that data, and we've seen that over the last few years. 8 Ducatis on the grid. Data is power, but now everyone can get a little bit of that power. And I, for one, I think it's quite interesting to get that GPS data. It depends on how granular it is. If it's something that tells us the speed at individual moments, or the gear, lots of different things, you're able to understand an awful lot from it. I think one of the things for me in superbikes that's always quite interesting is there's no new technology on a superbike. You're running everything from a production-based bike. So a lot of the times teams are able to give you a lot of information that in MotoGP paddock you wouldn't get. And that can be something as simple as the shift pattern that they're using, or any data that you could take from that GPS. So I think that's going to be something that's really exciting. And probably the one negative from it is, Dave, you're going to sift through this all the time, and it's going to mean that your roundup's going to come out at about 4 a.m. rather than 3 a.m.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're not going to be publishing it. They'll only be sharing it with the teams and not with us, which is a shame. The only thing you're going to get from the GPS data is speed and position. So you'll be able to see where the bikes are and how fast they're going, but you won't be able to see all the rest of the factors will have to work out for themselves.
Okay, then discard everything I said there. But just fall in with a team, Dave, that's going to give you that information, and then you're okay. You've got French Tom on the pod, so there's one French team there that might help.
Another form of analysis, of course, is going to be pretty interesting. Like we say, it's another way to make performance differential. But Neil, what's your opinion? Do you think, is this a way just to curb Ducati's influence on MotoGP? Is there going to be frustration in the R&D department in Bologna and Ducati course?
I think so. I think there'll be a bit of frustration there, potentially with Aprilia as well, who've done so much brilliant work with their aerodynamics over the last couple of years. And it will just be interesting to see just how much this has a limiting factor on MotoGP. As Tom mentioned, this was the intention when we went to 800cc's back in 2007, and it didn't really work out. Will this have the desired effect of cutting top speed substantially so that tracks that we visit don't seem so on the limit as they do now? Because anything we've sort of seen in the past that's been aimed to sort of influence speed and limit it, maybe hasn't quite had the complete desired effect, because engineering and technology moves on to the extent that they're always finding ways around these limitations. So yeah, I mean, it remains to be seen, but we'll be interested to see how it goes.
On to predictions. This week, we're going to be a bit more comprehensive. We need a pick for Moto3, Moto2, and MotoGP, and also who finishes higher, Quartararo or Zarco at Le Mans. I'm going to go first for Moto3. Daniel Holgado, he won in 2023, is also very fast on the GASGAS at the moment, so he's my pick. Over to you, Tom. Who's going to win on the smaller bikes?
Oops. Yeah, I would say Holgado as well, because this is the French GP. This is for his French team, so it will be nice. It's a nice story for them.
Steve, we know you like a bet, so who's going to be on? Well, he's going to be swallowing your money in Moto3.
Oh my goodness, I really wasn't expecting to have to know anything about Moto3. I'm gonna go with Alonso in Moto3, just to be different as much as anything else. And I like David Alonso, so I'll go with him.
A very risky bet, that one. Goodness, make sure you don't put your house on that. Dave, after you were front row of the Moto3 press conference in Spain and have a new zeal for the category, I expect you to be offering a lot of insight for your prediction here.
Yeah, I'm going to be shamelessly biased and just say Colin Fair is going to win again.
Neil, who's your pick?
Yeah, I think Fair is a good shout. I also think the names that have already been mentioned could be up there, or Jose Antonio Rueda if he manages to come back. He's had some physical limitations the last couple of weeks, so if Rueda's back, I'll go for him.
Neil, continue. Who's your pick for Moto2?
Well, I think it's an interesting question. I think Joe Roberts is just on such a kind of a crest of a wave at the moment that he's a good shot. He's had a mixed record at Le Mans, but he did have pole position there the last time he raced in 2020 with the American racing team. And had it not been for some strange conditions on the Sunday, he might well have won that race. So, yeah, I think Joe could be on for his first win of the season.
Yeah, I thought about Joe Roberts, but then in your sort of cool interview that we had on the last podcast, he said he's more of a fast corner guy. I know he's a bit more versatile this year, so I don't really see that being sort of one of the strengths at Le Mans, so I'm going to plump for Sergio Garcia instead. For Moto2 for you, Dave?
I'm quite looking forward to it. I'm sort of torn between Roberts and Aldeguer, because Aldeguer had a bit of a rough start to the season, and obviously, fantastic. Put everything together at Jerez, came out on top, and you sort of feel that he's got momentum. And so I think it's going to be Fermin Aldeguer, but I think Joe Roberts is going to be sort of really quite close.
Tom?
I would say Manuel Gonzalez, because he's getting closer and closer to the win and also to the podium. So he's maybe in a good momentum now. So maybe Manuel Gonzalez.
Yeah, he's one of the sort of underrated riders in Moto2, it feels like this year. But when it comes to MotoGP, it's been a Ducati wash, hasn't it, for the last sort of 4 years? Oh, sorry, Steve. Beg your pardon.
It's all right. Just because I was going to agree with Tom on Manu Gonzalez doesn't mean I don't want to be able to say I want Manu to win. I think he's been really impressive, and the switch to Pirellis has obviously helped him. But Gonzalez is a very smart rider, and he keeps making steps. And what I'm seeing from him is very similar to what we saw from him in 300s and Super Sports. He's had 2 podiums. He's at the top 5 as well. Other than, I think it was Coda, he had a bit of a disaster. But, I think he's been really good. And for me, if he keeps knocking on the door, he can win. And I think somewhere like this could be the place where he makes that step.
Who you liking for MotoGP then, Steve? And also, who's going to finish higher, Quartararo or Zarco?
Straight back to me. No, you don't need that. I'm gonna go with a Ducati rider to win. Would you believe? If I've got first choice of the whole field, I'll pick the red bikes, and I'm gonna go with Bastianini actually. And then between the 2 French riders, I think Fabio for sure. The Honda's just not good. As long as they both finish, Fabio finishes ahead of Zarco.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, like I was saying, Ducati's sort of owned Le Mans for the last sort of 4 years. For my pick, I'm going to go for Pecco Bagnaia, which might seem slightly strange because he hasn't finished on the podium in the Premier class, at any time at Le Mans. I think he's a previous winner in Moto2, but I think just, the way he's braking and handling the Desmos Adichie at the moment, he's going to be right up there for victory on Sunday. Neil, your choice?
I think Marc Marquez is going to win. I thought he had a great, obviously, weekend in Jerez, crashing out of the lead in the sprint aside. And he had a really good test on the Monday after Jerez, in which he said that he was able to just really measure his progress from the pre-season to this kind of current moment. He said during pre-season there were lots of not sures. When he was asked how this setting was making him feel, how this change in the bike was making him feel, he said he's got to the point now where he can be very clear with feedback, very precise, and I just think that was another day gained on a bike that you might say his adaptation period's over, but there's another day on a bike that he's just managed to get a little more understanding of. So it's been a great run for him in the past. He rode heroically there last year, fighting for the podium up until the last lap before he crashed out. So yeah, I think Mark can take his first Ducati win this weekend.
Oh, incidentally,
and
I agree.
Quartararo, sorry, I think
Yeah,
Quartararo beats Zarco.
I was going to say, I kind of agree as well. I think Fabio is going to be the top Frenchman on the way, and Neil plumps for that also. Dave, your pick for the Premier class?
I mean, I like Bastianini. I think he's going to be good. Bagnaia is a good shout as well. I think that Neil is on the money. I think that Mark is going to win here. I think he's got all of his ducks in a row now, and he's going to be able to put it together. And keep an eye on Maverick Vinales, because if you remember, he was really fast here last year. Obviously, he had the first corner coming together with Pecco Bagnaia, together with the comedy handbags in the gravel trap, which added much to the entertainment. Of course, we keep forgetting to mention Jorge Martin. Jorge Martin is going to be there or thereabouts, but I do think that Marquez is going to win this weekend. Is Fabio going to beat the Hondas? I don't, or beat Zarco. I don't know. I think that Zarco is going to give Fabio a run for his money. I think you could well see Zarco ahead of Fabio this weekend.
Tom, no pressure at all, but we will laugh at you if you're completely wrong for your home GP.
This difficult choice, because I think that Pedro Acosta could make some great result there, because if you remember in Moto2, his first races there, he nearly win the race before crashing, and maybe Pedro Acosta, but I will follow Neil as well. Marc Marquez is on a good momentum as well, and I think that he will win. So let's see. And for the French guys, I would say Zarco as well, because I'm not sure about Fabio, and I think that Zarco with all the attendance around the track will do something great.
So there goes the special 1-to-1 interview of Fabio Quartararo in Sport Bikes magazine. Then we'll have to wait for 2025 for that one. Fantasists, don't forget to set your MotoGP Fantasy League teams through MotoGP.com, or be like Steve and get someone to do it for you. If you haven't already joined us, then look up
That screwed me over. I want to make perfectly clear as well. I lost a lot of points that weekend, so I'm not standing for any of that.
Guys, if you haven't already joined us, then look up Alpine Stars Paddock Pass podcast and join our special competition. The winner at the end of the year will get some goodies from the good folks in Asolo. We'll be bringing you our first Paddock Note show from Thursday at Le Mans, and then the Friday and Saturday shows will be available exclusively for our Paddock Insiders on Patreon. Sign up and join us for just $10 a month for these podcasts and more. Big thanks to Tom, David, Neil and Steve, and to Renthal, Street, KTM and Fly Racing, as well as you for listening. Do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. We're going to play out this week with an interview with Red Bull GASGAS Tech3's Jacob Roulstone. The young Aussie has adapted to his rookie year in Moto3 with impressive speed and form, and has slotted nicely into the top 10 with tons of potential. With Tech3's home GP coming up this weekend, we thought it'd be cool to reveal some of the story with their latest Moto3 star. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Sunday from the Circuit de la Sarthe. Jacob, right at the start of your Moto3 career, how's it going? That's the most obvious question, really, because, I think people had questions about you. Who were you? What was your potential? You're not the smallest of guys as well, which, could be a handicap in this class. But so far, things have been going pretty good.
Yeah, it's been going so far so good for my debut in the World Championship. Of course, even from Junior GP and Red Bull Rookies Cup, it's a huge step. But no, I think I'm in the best team possible to get to grips with it all, and learning is continuing, which is nice. But no, I've liked my time so far here. Yeah.
Do you think there's a strange phenomenon almost a little bit around Moto3 and riders of your age and your ability coming through, because you have these bizarre talents like Pedro Acosta, Izan Guevara, Jose Reda, who win everything and come in, people have these expectations straight away. So for people that maybe you need to build up at a different speed, it can be a little difficult or more pressurized perhaps.
Yeah, it is a bit challenging to run with the Spanish because they're at such a young age, bar-to-bar racing, where Australia is now getting better, but it wasn't the time that I started. We weren't able to do that. So it's, yeah, for sure it's hard to always keep fighting against them because all the riders are incredible in Moto3. So, but you do feel it's hard to get here to the World Championship, but it's just as easy to get kind of dropped out of it. So there is a lot of pressure as you're a rookie and it's the start of the season. So people tell you there's no pressure, it's relaxed, but no, of course you feel pressure. All the big sponsors of the team are here, all the big team members are here. So that plays on the mind a lot. But no, I've got to grips with it so far, and yeah, finding my pathway, which is good.
Can you explain a little bit to some listeners your story? I mean, how you came to be racing in the rookies, the transition you had to make from Australia to come over to Europe?
Yeah, so I originally started with motocross just for fun. I grew up around bikes. My cousins were quite high-level motocross riders, so I just grew up riding with them and riding in that situation. And yeah, just competed in that when I was younger. Made the change to flat track just because motocross was starting to get a little bit, unless I wasn't training a couple of times a week, you weren't able to be super competitive. So we made the switch to flat track, and when we made that switch, it was pretty obvious that we were going to go to road. So I think it was 3 or 4 years in flat track, maybe a little bit longer. I was able to get a few Australian championships, which is cool. And started on road bikes around, I want to say 2017. And yeah, Dad and I and Mum just had the ambition just to go have a bit of fun. And yeah, I was doing all right. We just focused on getting the basics and the foundations really, really good. A lot of small bike training and just focusing on what was important. And yeah, in 2018, I went to I was selected, excuse me, after the tryouts for the Asia Talent Cup. So that was a big step up from racing small tracks and stuff like that in Australia. But no, I struggled a little bit at the start of that, but then worked my way up to get, I think my best was a top 6 finish, which wasn't too bad. And then was I didn't get a second year in that, which was a bit disappointing, but it did make us think to look at the move to come to Europe, which we did in 2020.
The whole family, right? Was that?
No, so it was just Mum and I. Dad had to stay at work, and my older sister at that time had to finish off school and start university. So it was a big change. It was right basically as COVID hit. So Mum and I arrived, and a couple of weeks later, straight into lockdown. So that was for sure hard to be away from the family and locked in a hotel room for 105 days or something. So it's Mum and I still have a great relationship, which is good. But no, it that was for sure the most difficult time. But we decided to stay in Spain, and we figured it would the ball would get rolling more in Europe just before kind of Australia with that riding aspect. But no, I competed in the 2020 and 2021, in the European Talent Cup. and yeah, I was in a really, really good team, and yeah, felt that was a huge shock as well, because it's a big step from the Asia Talent Cup to come here. But no, I just kept learning, and that was the goal.
When you mention a huge step, how would you
just
define that? Is it
just the level, the speed, the level, like these kids who are even younger than me at the time was beating me by like 4 seconds a lap or something. It was ridiculous. So that's a lot to get used to, as well. All the like telemetry and the data system. That's a big step as well. But we just had to learn, and that's what we focused on, just learning. And we didn't have the expectation to go and win the first year. So yeah, we did that for 2020 and 21. I was able to get a race win for the first race in 2021, and then a second and third at the end of the year.
Sorry to interrupt, but when you feel like you're making progress, is that more to do with confidence, or is it something specific, like knowing how to read data, or gaining confidence, or
it's to gain the confidence that you're just as good as all the Spanish or Italians who are in the championship, and understanding more about the way that you can see how you ride the bike through the data, and not just your parents videoing you on the side of the track. So that's a big thing to learn, and see the different things you have to tweak. But once you get confident with that, and that's what I found I did towards the end of 2020, and it helped me through 21. That was that's the main thing. I think confidence is a huge thing in this sport, and your self-belief. Not to be overconfident, but no, we just kept chipping away. I had a bit more pressure on myself for 2021 to get a seat in the Moto3 Junior GP class, which I was able to with Aspar Junior team. So at that time as well, I did get selected for Red Bull MotoGP Rookies Cup, which was another step as well, going into both those championships at once and learning those bikes. Because
I mean, getting those opportunities, how difficult is that? I mean, have you been sat across the table trying to work out the intricacies of a deal with someone, or
it's that side as well. Aspar you had to be at a decent level for that to take that seat, so I was lucky enough to get it. And with Red Bull Rookies Cup as well, it's only, I think, around 7 selected per year or something like that. So that's a big confidence booster when you get selected for that. So yeah, 2022 was quite a challenging year for me with that. Just a few unlucky incidents, and just a lot of information to take in from both championships. But I had really good people around me, so I was just constantly working like I did in 2020, just learning and understanding everything. And
because I mean, you must also be learning about how to construct a career, not just be faster on the racetrack.
Yeah, because when you go to the junior GP, it's starting to get it's a lot more serious at that point. So that at that time, there's the bosses who are here are watching there all the times and all the races. So that's what plays on a bit of the back of your mind that you got to focus on. So we just had to do what we did in 2020 and just continued to work. And I then into 23, I did a really good off season and felt strong from the start. And that's what I was really pumped with. Is I did all the effort in the off season, and it played off, and I was kind of fighting from top 5 from the first round of last year. So that as well got a lot of attention in Junior GP and Red Bull Rookies Cup, and I was able to get 2 seconds and a third in both championships, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, that's a big confidence boost. And then I was sussing out, we were trying to sort out for a ride in the Moto3 World Championship, and that's another game as well.
How do you even get that opportunity? Is it
basically, Mum, who was my manager, just For example, at Jerez, after I got a podium in rookies, Hervé said good luck, congratulations, and I just made sure I kind of kept that relationship. And then in Assen as well, I got another podium, and I basically told him I'm interested in riding for the in the Moto3 World Championship next year. Just thought I'd let you know if you're looking for a rider, and nothing really happened from it. But I figured I'd just tell a couple people just so they know that I'm looking for a ride. And yeah, eventually Hervé called Mum into his office in Misano, so it was quite late, which we were worried that we were going to do another year in Junior GP, which would be okay, but we really wanted to come here. And yeah, Hervé offered me a ride, so yeah, I'm super grateful of that.
So you arrived to the point where we're in the Moto3 World Championship doing an interview for a podcast in a pokey little office for the team, thinking, how hot is it in here? But listen, going a little bit further back, when you said you were quite doing a lot of motocross with your cousins, I mean, were you contemporaries of like the Lawrences and people like that around that time, or was that early? That was too early?
I was no one really at motocross, just for fun. I've actually never met the Lawrence brothers at all, but no, I think there was one race, maybe a state championship where Jet was there or something like that. I don't really remember at that point, but no, they kind of did a similar path. I think of what we did is they moved to Europe at quite a young age, and their father seems that they had a really good morals for the boys. So yeah, it's cool to be able to watch their path as well, and to be able to kind of do a similar thing, which is cool.
It seems it's perhaps a silly question because it's kind of obvious, but I gather you took something from motocross, and then of course those years flat tracking, that there's some sort of something ingrained in your technique or the way that you handle a motorcycle that came from that, right?
Yeah, I think for the main things that I remember, because I was quite young as well doing motocross, but the main techniques is through flat track, which I still do motocross and flat track to this day. A lot more flat track throughout the season, just as it's a bit more safer. It's the front and rear sliding, which I find is the biggest benefit. So when you lose the front, you learn how to control it, and if the rear steps out, you learn how to position your body to be able to control that. And you see a lot of the top riders do flat track. So yeah, I do think it's one of the best cross training that you can do. You've been kind of roaming near the top 10 of Moto3, in your first Grand Prix in this championship. I mean, it's been a fantastic sort of induction that you've had. How have you found like the intensity of the Grand Prix class, and just trying to learn your potential and your limits? The main thing that I have struggled with is the first lap in FP1 is they're on it straight away, which has been the difficult thing to get to grips with. Whereas Junior GP, you have really a day and a half to get up to that point. A day and a half? Yeah, it's a 4 day of that, where here it's a 4-day event in Junior GP, where here it's, all right, lap one, you have to straight away be a second off the lap record. So that's been the biggest thing to get used to. It's a good year to come into the World Championship, I think, because we have the new tyres, and for KTM we have the new bike as well. So it kind of leveled it out a little bit. But yeah, it's still, I'm struggling with it. But of course, it's a lot better than Qatar, just to go out and not kind of work into it or warm into it. You just have to be ready and give it all. But no, that is the main thing that I think is the difference between the Junior GP and Rookies Cup from the World Championship, and that they're so consistent and so precise. And yeah, it's the World Championship, so it's all the top boys here. How do you find life in the pack? I mean, of course, for TV viewers and fans of MotoGP, it looks pretty insane. It's frantic, it's perilous, it's really kind of gripping from the first lap to the last. How is it for you in the middle of that? I think we all have like it's kind of strange. All us riders respect each other on track. some more than none, but you'll get that the whole time throughout this championship. But no, we all have respect for each other. We all don't cross the line that there is. So yeah, you do get more comfortable. Of course, there's some crazy riders out there who do some crazy moves, but the rubbing's racing, and that's I'm fine with it. Sometimes there's an aggressive move that you might not agree with, but no, everyone here is fighting for the same thing as me, so everyone wants it more than each other. So that's just how it is in this class.
Lastly, Jacob, what would be your definition of success this year? I mean, would it be something like a season Colin Bayer has, where you just progress in terms of results up to the point where you're challenging for a podium and win, or would it be a little bit more grounded, where you having to learn the tracks, as well as you say, like the intensity of the timetable of Grand Prix? Where do you orientate yourself?
The success leading into the championship, I was just happy to constantly take points and make Q2 appearances, where now I'm wanting to be fighting in the top 10, and I am. The last two GPs I've been able to make it straight to Q2, so it's kind of changed my vision that I had, and I think impressed myself a little bit with that. But yeah, just for my side and my team's side and my family side is just to continue learning and just to build as much information as I can, learn as many things as I can. For sure, I'll be happy to get a couple of top 5 finishes towards the end of the season. I'm not saying a podium or a win is out of the books. Of course, if there's the opportunity there, I'm going for it. But no, I just think that I just need to keep grounded and make sure that I keep doing the fundamentals and not get too ahead of myself to think that to get too hungry for that. I just need to step by step keep going, and we'll eventually get there.
Well, listen, thanks for talking to us, and best of luck with it.
Thank you.